Hello learners, today we would like us to discuss about one of the fundamental principles of finance, which is ratio analysis. And here we have been given a question 22. You are provided with the following extracts of the statement of profit or loss and statement of financial position for Darubini Limited for the years ended 30 June 2020, 2021 and 2022. So here we have Darubini Limited. We have the income statement, or what we call sometimes as statement of profit or loss extract, and we have the sales, the cost of sales, depreciation, finance cost, income tax expense. Then we have the statement of financial position. We have the non-current assets, current assets. We have long-term liabilities. We have current liabilities. We have equity. So, and you have been given 3 years here, which is 2020, 2021 and 2022. So friends, ratios are of different categories. They are of different categories. We will cover it in the subsequent lessons. But today, let us discuss or let us look at one of the categories of ratios, which is profitability ratios. Profitability ratios. So it's one of the classification of ratios. Profitability ratios are also known as operating efficiency ratios. Operating efficiency ratios. So the examiner may use any of the two words. So if you are told to calculate profitability ratios, then we have one of the ratios that come or that fall under profitability ratios is net profit margin. 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 So how do you calculate net profit margin, or what is the formula for calculating net profit margin? It's very simple. Whenever this word, which is margin, comes into your mind, what should come to your mind is sales. Margin is related to sales. So the formula for profitability ratios is given by net profit margin is given by net profit divided by sales. So examiner sometimes might give you revenue. You still use revenue and sales. You can use either revenue or sales. So the formula for net profit margin is net profit divided by sales. Then you express it as a percentage by multiplying 100. You multiply by 100. So that is the formula for net profit margin. In our case here, we have 3 years, 2020, 2021 and 2022. So let us calculate the net profit margin for these 3 years. So net profit margin is given by net profit. It's given by net profit. Net profit is given by net profit. So our net profit here is, for this year, is 3640. You divide by what? By sales. By sales, which is 54,000. Then you express it as a percentage. You multiply by 100. So you express as a percentage when using your calculator you can say times 100, but for me I'm using Excel, so I will just click the percentage icon here, which will give me 7%. Then I can use 2 decimal places, which is 6.74. So for this following year, the same applies to it. So following year, if I just show you, net profit margin is given by the net profit for 2021. Net profit for 2021 is 10,133. You divide by sales. Then you multiply by 100 when you're using manually, but for Excel you will just click the percentage icon and then express it in 2 decimal places. Okay, so then the same applies to the other year, the subsequent year, which is 2022. So that's the formula for net profit margin. Okay friends, let us move to the second ratio under profitability, which is gross profit margin. Gross profit margin. You can just guess the formula for gross profit margin because it's not that much different from the net profit margin. Gross and net, there's a little difference. So for gross profit margin, you take the gross profit, you divide by sales, and then you express as a percentage by multiplying by 100. So gross profit margin is given by the gross profit for the year. The gross profit you divide by sales or revenue, whichever you are given, and then you express as a percentage by multiplying by 100. So that's the formula for gross profit margin. So if we calculate the gross profit margin for these 3 years, so we'll start with 2020. So the gross profit margin, where is the gross profit? Is given by gross profit. Where is the gross profit here? Our gross profit is here, 21,600. I divide by what? I divide by the sales, which is here. Then I will multiply by 100. So you multiply by 100 if you're using a calculator, but for Excel you will just click the percentage icon, and then I will round off to 2 decimal places. Okay, that's it. The same applies to the other 2 years, so I'll just drag it. Okay, let us move to the next ratio, friends. I hope you are following. The next ratio is return on capital employed. 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 How do you get return on capital employed? Return on capital employed is given by EBIT divided by capital employed times 100. It is given by EBIT divided by capital employed. Divide by capital employed, and you express as a percentage. So that's the formula for return on capital employed. EBIT divided by capital employed times 100. One might ask himself or herself, and how do you get capital employed? capital employed is given by capital employed is given by net asset or total assets minus current liabilities. Total assets minus current liabilities. Total assets minus current liabilities. So total assets minus current liabilities. So in our case here, in 2020, our EBIT is a short form for earning. It is the abbreviation of earning before interest and tax, or profit before interest and tax. And earning before interest and tax are the same things, one of the same thing. So let us find return on capital employed for the year 2020. So this is given by, we will start with EBIT, earning before interest and tax. Here we have profit before interest and tax, which is the same as earning before interest and tax. So we will take this, which is 10,200, divide by capital employed. So capital employed, we shall find it by taking the total assets for this year is 45,300 minus current liabilities. Our current liabilities comprised of accounts payable and bank overdraft, and this is the total. So, and then you express whatever you get here, you express as a percentage by multiplying by 100. But if you're using Excel, you can just use the percentage icon and then you round off to 2 decimal places. You put into 2 decimal places. So the same applies to the other year, which you'll just say is equal to our EBIT, which is here, which is just here. Where is it? Earning before interest and tax. Here you divide by the capital employed. So you open a bracket, you will take the total assets for the year 2021. You subtract the minus the current liabilities, which is here. So whatever you get here, you multiply by 100 or express as a percentage. That's it. So for the other year, you can just calculate for yourself. It's that easy. So we are done with return on capital employed. Now we move to ratio number 4 under profitability ratios, which is return on equity. Return on equity on equity, which is sometimes called return on investment. Return on investments. And the examiner might also use another word, which is return on net worth. Return on net worth. So it is ROI or ROE or RON. So what is the formula for return on equity, return on investment, or return on net worth? Don't worry, the formula is the same. So it is given by profit attributable to equity holders. You divide by total equity times 100. Profit attributable to equity holders So this is given by the profit attributable to equity holders. Profit attributable to equity holders. These are the ordinary shareholders. You divide by what? Total equity. Total equity. Then you multiply by 100, multiply by 100, or expressed as a percentage. So we know profit attributable to equity holders. What about total equity? How do we get total equity? So don't worry, total equity is given by what? Total equity is given by, total equity is also known as net worth. So total equity is given by reserves plus share capital. So reserves, it's comprised of reserves plus share capital. Reserves plus share capital. Reserves plus share capital plus share premium plus share premium plus share premium plus share premium plus retained earnings plus retained earnings plus retained earnings plus retained earnings. That's the formula for calculating total equity. So in our case here, if we want to calculate the return on equity or return on investments or return on net worth for the year 2020, this will be equal to profit attributable to equity holders. That is the net, same as the net profit. So you'll take this 3640, you divide by the total equity. Our total equity is here. It's comprised of paid up capital and retained earnings. So this is our total equity. You divide by that. Then you multiply by 100. Multiply by 100 or express as a percentage if you are using Excel. That is if you are doing computer-based examination and the examiner allowed you to use Excel. Okay, so that is it. What about the subsequent year, which is 2021? Our profit attributable to equity holders, which is the same as the net profit here, you divide by what? Our total equity, which is this one. Then we multiply by 100, and express into decimal points. So 2 decimal places. So you just drag, you get the return on capital, return on equity for 2022. Friends, I think we are together. Let us move to ratio number 5 under profitability ratios. Is what we call return on total assets. 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 So how do you get return on total assets? Return on total assets is given by net income or net profit. divided by total assets times 100. So the formula for this is return on total assets given by net income or net profit. Let us use net profit because they are just the same. Net profit divided by total assets. Divided by total assets. Divided by total assets. Net profit divided by total assets. Then we multiply by 100. Remember, profitability ratios are always in percentage. That should be at the back of your mind when you're going to that examination room, that profitability ratios are always in percentage. So I'll always express it as a percentage. So let us find the return on total assets for the year 2020. So return on total assets, we said it is given by net profit divided by total assets. So what is our net profit in 2020? Our net profit here is this one, that's 640. You divide by the total assets, which is 45,300. Then you express as a percentage by multiplying by 100. So that is it for 2020. So for 2021, our net profit is what? Our net profit is 10,133. We divide by our total assets. It's here. Then we multiply by 100, or express as a percentage, and then you can just find for 2022 as a practice. Okay, that is it. That's the answer for 2022 return on total assets. So guys, that is the end of our discussion today. At the end of this lesson, you should be able to master profitability ratios or operating efficiency ratios, which are majorly 5: net profit margin, gross profit margin, return on capital employed, return on equity, which is same as return on investments or return on net worth. Then the final ratio under profitability ratios is return on total assets. With that, guys, I wish you all the best. Until we meet next time, may you stay safe and sound. Thank you very much. Please consider subscribing. Stay blessed. Thank you.